And welcome once again, everyone, to Park City, Utah. Utah Olympic Park, 30 miles away from downtown Salt Lake City, where winter has finally hit the winter sports scene. The temperature just above zero, but lots of excitement for the second stop on the FIBT World Cup Tour, Women's Skeleton Run 2, coming up in just a moment. Hello once again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer, pleased to be joined in just a moment by 2001 World Cup Skeleton champion Lincoln DeWitt. It was a decidedly American accent in run number 1, but it was North American from top to bottom. This is Sarah Reed of Canada. Check that out. She had the third place time of 50.19. Reed won the World Cup opening event last year in Calgary and comes off of the top 5 finish last week. In second place after the first heat, the yellow bib signifying the World Cup leader, Lizzie Yarnold of Great Britain, who won the competition on the Calgary track. She held the lead throughout virtually all of the first run earlier today until the final sled of the competition. Noelle Pikus-Pace, who had the fastest 2-heat time in the opening World Cup race last week, only to be disqualified, started dead last today because of that disqualification. For the first time in anyone's memory, the last starter had the fastest time. Not only that, the American from Orem, Utah, came through with a track record time of 49.80. Excitement for the hometown crowd and Lincoln DeWitt as we check out the standings. It's a tough lead to give away here in the second heat.
Well, I would have said it was a lock until we saw what happened in the men's race.
Men's race earlier today, in case you missed it, Martin's Dukurs, the figuratively unstoppable, was stopped by Russia's Alexander Trechikov. But concentrating on the women now, they will go with 21 athletes. There was actually a tie for 20th place after the first heat. They will go in reverse order with Noelle Pikus-Pace the last to go, but still some other Americans, Canadians, and Great Britain athletes in contention for the medals. Great credit for the crowd, braving the conditions here. They love their winter sports in the site of the 2002 Winter Olympic Games, which, if I read my Roman numerals correctly, there was the 19th Olympic Winter Games. As the start list reflects their reverse order from the first run. Cold temperatures, it's not expected to warm up at all today, Lincoln. What kind of extra challenge and really what kind of advantage is that for the athletes?
Well, the good thing is when it's cold like this, the track tends to stay very consistent from one athlete to the next. The challenge is warming up enough for the start. You have to go out and spend half an hour or 45 minutes out warming up outside, trying to get your muscles loose and ready for the sprint start. And that's a challenge when it's this cold. Temperature
was minus 12 Fahrenheit when we woke up this morning. Probably just a little bit above zero today, with it expected to warm up, and I use that term loosely, to about 10 degrees. Here is Great Britain's Donna Creighton, 28 years old, from Portsmouth, 6th overall in the 2011 World Cup rankings, but she has fallen off a bit in the last couple of years. Start time so important, and she has a 5:11, obviously the fastest so far. She's the only sled down the track, and if you're new to the sport, World Cup Skeleton is 2 heats, a total time competition, just like ski racing. So that 109, 110 is added on from her first heat time.
Having a little trouble here, turn 6. She went into it from the right side, which set up for some pretty big looping there. She went up pretty high up on the wall. A little skid and a bump before the critical turn 11. Look for another bump maybe here on the exit.
Creighton down in the lower portion now, the straightaway, very clean. We saw lots of trouble, lots of time being bled away here in the first heat. We won't know until we see a few more sleds come down, but we can tell you her 51.13 is slightly slower than her first heat time.
Her start was a couple hundred slower, and her finish was a couple hundred slower. Track seems to be holding pretty consistent, not just within a heat, but even from heat to heat today. or cold to cold today.
Very tough start of the season for a British athlete who was really stormed on the scene a few years ago.
Solid starts, but just not quite consistent yet on the driving side. Some really good results, but sometimes just not as consistent on the track yet.
Next sled to take this Park City track is driven. Do you say drive? Do you drive a sled? Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
right?
you drive a sled.
Driven, not ridden, by Catherine Eustace of New Zealand, coached by American former World Cup medalist Terry Holland.
When you start out, you're just riding on it. But hopefully by the time you're on the World Cup, you're driving the sled. A little issue there at the load where she's getting on her sled. You saw her feet kick out to the side.
Great example of the sound of this sled going down. Later on, you hear the bobsleds. They make about twice as much noise. It gives you, it's not, we won't call this a violent sport, but it isn't a quiet one either.
No, well, when you're on the sled though, you mostly just hear the wind noise. You don't hear the little rattles and bumps so much on the sled. Or that scraping noise that you hear of the helmet and toes dragging on the ice in the high G turns.
Lots of bangs against the wall, 2200s up. That could disappear a little bit down here at the bottom to 19. Probably will run out of track before she gives up the entire lead as Eustace crosses 50.98, 1500s in front of Creighton. The sun has made its way out. It's actually a pretty clear day here. On most days we see shades all over the tracks. Not the case when it's this cold. It's a tradition in the sport, the coach yelling. It's not going to really make you any faster, is it?
You know, one coach, maybe not, but you know, when you get a lot of people along the side of the start yelling and screaming, it can get you a little bit pumped up and get a couple hundredths out of you at the start.
Next up from Latvia, here in Park City, this is Lita Prejulena. 18th place, or 19th rather, after the first run with a time of 51.01. I was watching a bobsled race once as we were talking about coaches yelling, and the push athletes in the four-man bobsled race, the athletes themselves were yelling. And I was saying, well, that can't be helping their speed any. But a weightlifter sometimes grunts on the clean and jerk.
Well, and you'll see the push athletes do it because all they have to do is push and then get in the sled and sit there until the finish. You wouldn't usually see the driver doing that.
Prejulena with a start time of 5:08, by far the fastest we've seen so far. Let's see if her inexperience gives away some.
Well, really close to the roof there and more there. Just having some difficulty here in the middle of the track.
Really not touching anything yet, but coming close to problems, and now her lead's down to 600s with a little skid.
And when you see him go that high up on the wall and then not hit on the exit, means that she has to do a lot of driving in the turn, which is slowing her down a little bit.
Down to 400s and all sorts of trouble. She will be a 10th back at the finish split. She'll give it, well, only 400s back, but she gave away 1500s in the last 200 meters of that track.
I don't know if she bumped her head there at the low point. She's holding onto her neck a little bit there. I'm not sure if that was an injury or.
Yeah, it could be.
Looks like, I think she hit the side of the wall enough on the right side there at the low point. See if we get a replay of that.
She came close to bigger problems at the top, but yeah, then she did the banging down in the straightaway before the finish curve.
Yep.
This was higher up, right?
Yep, that's coming out of 10.
So the issue is
a little bit of a skid here, but the big one came lower down.
There it is.
Here it comes.
Great job, guys, with the replay.
Right there, and then another hit here.
And it had just been the friction, the force on the neck that she was experiencing. You didn't see her hit it, did we?
Nope.
Maria Orlova, 18th place from Russia. The nation excited about the Olympic Games coming up. The track in Sochi is ready. Staged a World Cup race last year. And
Another good push athlete here. She's got good starts. Still learning the driving portion of the sport.
5:07 the start time, best so far, and in the early going a 0.3 of a second advantage over the Kiwi down at the bottom.
Already having some issues, some little bumps along the way at the top.
Still holding on to a fairly nice advantage here. 0.4 of a second. Actually, until I mentioned that, she was looking pretty good. That Sochi track, as I mentioned, ready for racing. The town still had quite a bit of construction going on when the tour visited at the end of last season. With so many Olympic villages, it'll probably be ready about February 2nd, the day before the opening ceremonies. And an emphatic advantage here for Maria Orlova, better than a half second over the early competition.
A few little mistakes on the way down, but then clean through that critical section leading into the uphill finish curve. Couple little skids there. You got to be really quiet on the sled, on the straightaways, on the curves. The chances of skidding is much less, so you're always safer to drive and try and do as much of your maneuvering on the turns as opposed to on the straightaways where you want to just be as quiet as possible.
One Russian with the big lead, the second of 3 now to come. Maria Orlova has the lead. This is Olga Nikandrova, 17th place after run number 1. Still ahead, I just like pronouncing these names. We have Elena Nikitina, who is in 11th place, last week's silver medal winner. Earlier today, Russian Alexander Trechikov won the men's skeleton race.
Not as fast a start as her teammate.
5:20, actually the slowest of the 5 that have come down so far. The crowd here are lining the track. It's not a big crowd, but I give high marks to anyone who showed up today, Lincoln.
Yeah, sub-zero temperatures and weekday morning start time does not make for big crowds.
Middle part of this track, this is a section they call Albert's Alley because the Prince of Monaco, His Serene Highness, crashed here in one of the very first competitions held in 2000.
That's not the way you want to have a turn named after you.
Uphill finish, not as fast as her teammate. So Nikandrova currently in 2nd place, but 2800ths off the pace. Russia 1-2 in the early going here. Couldn't detect any major problems here, but
no big issues. The slow start was the biggest problem, and she just wasn't able to make up the time going down the track.
Getting set for our top 16 to come now. Our next competitor from Switzerland blistered it at the top in the first run, Lincoln. Milena Gilardoni at a 5:02. Would not have expected the fastest start from her.
No, that was a bit of a surprise. Fastest start in the women's field. Any push time in the women's field in a 5.0 something is a good start. She, with that 5:02, she's a danger. She could go be the first one we've seen today in the 90s.
490s. The record, 3-year-old record, was set by American Annie O'Shea, 494. As Gilardoni loads cleanly, and the start time 498.
There it is. First sub 5-second push for the women today. 400s off the start record.
Clearly she had some trouble on her way down the track.
So far pretty good at the top this run. Not a bad run here.
Holding on to 1700s. As I alluded to, she had her troubles on the way down the track in the first run after the great start. She's having trouble there with a skid out of that curve. Down the 1500s.
Losing
Can she
a little
hang
bit of
on?
a lead. A little bump, but not a big skid.
She's going to give it away. This is 700s, 15 to 700s, tied maybe. No, she lost 1600ths of a second on the last few curves. You need to be perfect, Lincoln.
That uphill section at the end is really critical. You can really lose a lot of time there.
Still, 13 sleds to come.
Great starts, but as is typical with the sliders in the sort of the mid-pack here, a little bit of inconsistency in her driving. She works on that some more. With that start, she could really be strong. There we see her hanging up on the end of a turn there and hitting on the right wall there, starting to go uphill. So that's what really cost her there.
Great start time, not a great downtown. 29-year-old Marion Thies, two-time world champion in the sport of women's skeleton, 2009 and 2011. Also the World Cup champion in 2009, but really struggling in the early going of this World Cup season.
We just saw the fastest push time in the field, and then the next athlete was the slowest push time in the field the first run.
Unbelievable how slow she is at the start, and she even has a little problem with the grooves there. She opens it up. Look, she gave away, how much here at the start? She gave away over 3,500ths at the start. And can she cut into that at all?
When you factor that means she's going that much slower into the first turn. That's more like a half second that she's giving away.
Marion Thies, very mild-mannered, quiet. When she won her first World Cup race, I interviewed her at the finish, and her face turned beet red. This is a little embarrassing for her to be in the spotlight.
She's driving well, not seeing any major mistakes, no skids. She's closing in. It's going to be close.
She'll need to be strong down here. She is 300ths up. So as a point of perspective, where everyone else is losing time at the bottom, Marion Thies of Germany picked up over a half second from the start to the finish on her competition.
Yeah, a great driver. Unfortunately for her, Park City track is just a little too short for her to make up for that start time with her great driving.
She has Lake Placid ahead of her. She knows she'll do a lot better there. She also has St. Moritz, Switzerland. That's a track she could do well on.
Those are both tracks I'd expect to see her challenging for a top 5 spot.
Using the golf analogy like I do so often in the sport, she's not the long driver. She's the short driver that can do well on some of those courses where precision is more important than distance. Coming up in a moment, American Katie Humphries, but here in Park City, our next competitor in the World Cup women's competition is Nozomi Komuro from Japan, 14th place after the first run. They have 30 seconds once the track is clear to start that sled, or they will be disqualified. Obviously a deliberate attempt there by Komuro, but a good start time to show for it, 5:09.
Bit faster than her first run.
$3,800s up. Now keep in mind, Thies of Germany with the lead down at the bottom had all of her speed and made up all of her time down at the bottom.
A few issues here, so Thies is looking good. And there's another big issue, a bump and a skid.
That is something you cannot recover from.
And there's another one.
She may fall back a couple of spots. Look at that quickly, a quarter of a second off the pace. Now the straightaway to the uphill.
Pretty clean there. Oh, as I say that, she breaks into a little bit of skid, but she also was going to be going a little slower coming into that straightaway.
A second, nearly a second in back of Marion Thies. That's unbelievable. She falls back 6 spots, and this with a lead a third of the way down the track. And no huge mistakes. It just shows you what a little bit of steering, a little bit of friction will do.
1 bump, 2 bumps, 3 bumps. Well, and the thing is, a lot of times one mistake puts you on a bad line to the next turn, so you're more prone to coming out with a mistake. There you see a skid, bumping the wall, skidding the other direction, going into that turn. So then, as you see here, she has trouble coming out of the turn, and another hit.
So it's been a tricky part of this track, and we can't emphasize enough, not every track in the world has uphill portions. Park City is one that does. And if you make that mistake before the uphill, there's no recovery. Kaillie Humphries of the United States has been one of the best skeleton athletes over the past 6 years, with 3 World Championship medals, a gold at this World Cup event last year, but she is coming back from an injury, and she has been hard-pressed to even hint at the top 10 in the early going this season.
Yeah, her start times are not anywhere near what we're used to seeing from her. And also, she has not had nearly as much sliding time as most of the other athletes because of her injuries. A little skid there.
29 years old, out of Breckenridge, Colorado, a great ski resort, and the daughter of a former Major League Baseball player, the late Ted Ulander, World Series champion with the Cincinnati Reds, big red machine of the 70s.
Heads up a little high there.
Holding on to a 500.
She's bouncing around on the sled a little too much.
And she falls behind Marion Teese down here at the bottom. Her speed of 76.6 miles an hour, nowhere near the German, falling back 2 places. These 2 women make up 3 of the last 4 world champions. But it's Marion Teese with the edge over Ulander on this day.
Ulander's still struggling to find her form for this year. Got to be frustrating for her at the beginning of an Olympic season to come into the season with such strong expectations and then to be having such a hard time the first couple of races.
We have to assume, and we'll talk to Katie later, we have to assume if she is injured but still competing, she has a plan to pace herself. You know, she's not going to put the Sochi run in danger.
But I know Katie, she doesn't just want to go to Sochi. She wants to contend there.
Janine Flock from Austria, next to go. The top athletes still to come a little later on the heat. Great Britain's Shelley Rudman, a world champion. Anja Huber of Germany, a world champion. And American Noelle Pikus-Pace, a world champion and first run leader. But here is Flock, coached by that man kneeling down next to the sled, Martin Rettel, who captured silver at the Olympic Games here in 2002 on a night when you, Lincoln, finished in the top 5. Very exciting day for the sport of skeleton.
It was a great return to the Olympics for skeleton that year after having been gone since 1948.
Start time of 5:12. I mean, one of my enduring memories of covering those Olympics and calling the action wasn't so much American Jim Shea's victory. It was the fact that all of the athletes, all of you gathered down at the finish to celebrate the sport really returning. It's quite a scene.
It was a great scene. It was a great party here.
1800s up on Flock, but again, this is where Marion Teese was so fast down here at the bottom.
Little hit there, not going to help her staying ahead of Marion.
No chance now. She's given up 1500s. Speed upcoming. Will it be 75? 77, not bad, but a 1/10 of a second back. Falling back 4 positions. You see what I was saying about Marion Teese? She almost looks embarrassed sometimes when she stays in that leader box.
Well, she knows when the top 5 or 6 come here that she'll be moved out of there, and those are the positions she expects to be in these races.
Crystal clear day here in Salt Lake City.
A little bump there going into turn 3, causing some trouble at the top of the track. And another bump going into 4. Each one of those little bumps sets you off your ideal line, so you're having to then drive a little bit more in each of the turns to make up for it, and that costs you time all the way down the track.
11 sleds remaining now. This is Elena Nikitina trying her best for the track to be cleared so she can get on. She's looking a little cold there.
Let's watch the start, though. She had the second fastest start time in the field the first run. That's her strong point, is the start, and then it's just a matter of limiting her mistakes on the way down.
And a start record last week in Calgary.
Start here is a little bit different. It's a shorter, steeper start, so not necessarily favoring the same athletes.
Fastest start time,
wow.
A 4:95, just a 100th
off.
second off of the record set by American Annie O'Shea. She did have a little problem, though, right out of the start.
Pretty clean at the top, extending that advantage from that great start.
We have seen big leads evaporate down here at the bottom. Her last split was 69. This is 69. A little bit of a skid.
It's going to be less. I think she'll still have enough to hold on, but it's going to be less.
Marion T so strong down here at the bottom, from 69 to 57. But down at the bottom of the track, this will be the leader. Elena Nikitina giving away most of that lead, but holding on to her spot with a chance to move into the top 10. Best run of the heat, actually, 50.15. So a good second run for the Russian.
Great run, great start, solid driving. She also has very good aerodynamics, so that helps her down at the bottom of the track. So that might help offset some of these little mistakes, like a little skid here that we're seeing. Heads up a little high there.
It's exactly what she did last week in winning that silver medal in Calgary. Strong at the top and strong all the way down. Midway through the second run here, it is Nikitina leading the way. When we return, it's American Noelle Pikus-Pace leading the way with the top seed. Stick around in Park City.
So we're taking another brief pause for a commercial break. Live TV, streaming around the world. Satellite truck parked in the parking lot of track operations here by the finish line. We've got 10 sliders down, 10 to go, only 10 sleds remaining. Current champion here for women's race number 2 of the Viessmann World Cup. Last week, Pikus-Pace had the fastest trip down. Unfortunately, she was disqualified. Once again, she had the fastest heat today. Can that trend continue here, heat number 2?
You probably know Ken Sloper. Yeah, he's the guy who told us that.
The track now clear at the skeleton start for Robin Thompson from Canada.
Come on, Robin. There's the clock.
For the sport of skeleton, the long road to Sochi begins in North America. We're in Park City, Utah, stop number 2 of the World Cup season. Tim Singer, along with Lincoln DeWitt. And we get set for our top 10 competitors here in the field. From Canada, Robin Thompson. Still ahead, we have 3 world champions still to come, including Noelle Pikus-Pace of the United States, the first run leader.
5:12 start, better than her first run. Going to help her hold her position here.
3 Canadians in the top 10. Coming up soon, we'll have Kathy Orish and Sarah Reed in 3rd place after the first run.
Robin's got a solid run going here. Oh, bump. 2/10 behind. See if she can be clean through the low point here. Make up some time.
Elena Nikitina of Russia took the lead before the break. She hangs on to that lead, much to her delight, as the Canadian falls back one spot with a combined time for the two heats of 1:41.08. One-handed start, revolutionized about 10 years ago. Now virtually everyone uses it. We'll see one notable exception a little later on, but it's very tough to push that sled, sprint on the ice, and have a clean load.
Here we see her trying to keep from crossing over to the opposite wall, using her toes to steer the sled at the last second there.
The one advantage of not going to the leader box, you can go inside and get warm. Next up, from Germany, Katharina Heinz. 9th place after the first heat. What's fascinating is we have some top 10 competitors here, week in and week out. The British, as an example, that come from nations that don't have tracks. Germany has 4 tracks, twice as many as the next biggest nations, United States and Canada, with 2 each.
All those tracks, they have a variety of different styles of tracks to train on in Germany.
Really prepares them well for the entire World Cup circuit. Slow start time, slowest we've seen, or second slowest, 5:26.
One surprising thing about the Germans is that not a lot of really fast starters on their team right now.
Anja Huber's not bad, right?
Yeah.
She's still to come, in fact, knocking on the doors of the medals. Bottom part of the track, the uphill section to the finish, 2/10 of a second back. This will not be enough. The Russian will stay in front. And just falling back one spot, Katharina Heinz. 1:40.99 for the 2 heats. Women's bobsled, 2-man bobsled, still to come a little later on today from Park City, Utah. Great leg drive, propelling forward. So key that the body doesn't move sideways, but it's just, you know, a forward movement.
Yeah, if you land too sideways on the sled, it's more likely to pop it out of the groove there, the groove that's cut in the ice, to keep the sled tracking straight while you're pushing it.
A moment ago we mentioned those nations that have tracks versus the ones that don't. Certainly you will not find any bobsled or skeleton track within 6,000 miles of Australia. Yet the Australians have a pretty solid program, especially in women's skeleton over the past decade or so. Here's Lucy Chafer in 8th place after run number 1. Her teammate Michelle Steele won a World Cup medal last week and is still to come here in Park City.
Before the Torino Olympics, the Australian Olympic Committee dedicated a bunch of money and resources into finding some good athletes and teaching them to compete in skeleton.
It's always been a pretty decent nation in skiing, especially freestyle skiing. So they enjoy their winter, although they enjoy their winter when we're outside in shorts.
Yeah, well, you see, the other sport they found some good athletes to compete in was in aerial skiing, where they converted a bunch of gymnasts and other athletes.
Right.
So they're really good at finding athletes from one sport whose abilities might translate into another sport.
Exactly. Jackie Cooper, his name was a world champion in aerials from Australia. Well, Nikitina's run is appearing to be better and better with every subsequent sled to come down here.
Well, that great start that she had, and managed to have a pretty solid drive on top of her great start.
It's great to see
second run.
She's not going to win a World Cup medal like she did last week, but it's great seeing the reaction of these, especially the younger athletes in the leader box, when they move up 2, 3, 4 positions. And again, sometimes Olympic qualifying positions are at stake. You get into the top 6, there could be a little bit of prize money.
Yeah, or staying ahead of her teammates to maintain you know, her ranking within the team for those Olympic spots, which is going to be even more critical with the home Olympics this year for them. A lot of pressure on them and on their program.
Seven to come now as we wind our way down among the top here in Park City, Utah. This is the first of the two remaining Canadians, shivering with her jacket on. She'll rip that off at the last moment. Cassie Harish, 7th place. Her teammate, Michelle Kelly, her trademark move actually was right before she started the sled, she ripped that jacket off. Harish, 29 years old, Manitoba resident, now lives in Calgary. Knocking on the door of the World Cup podium last season with 2 4th-place finishes.
Start's not her strongest point. She'll give up a little bit of time to our leader here and then try and make it back all the way down the track.
Former university heptathlete and a national team member in the sport of volleyball.
Volleyball to skeleton is not a transition you hear a lot.
There's also an American bobsled push athlete, Katie Eberling, who was a college volleyball player.
You hear a lot of track athletes converting.
Weightlifters occasionally.
Or bobsled, not skeleton.
Right. Although Katie Eulander's attempting that.
She's going the other way.
Reverse, exactly. Well, I think Nicotina will be picking up another spot here, as Harish is nowhere close to her bottom. In fact, she falls back 4 positions. And I don't know if those somersaults were a result of trying to stay warm or excitement. The jumping jacks down there.
Harish will be disappointed with that run. Not nearly as good a drive as she had her first run. Here she is very high on the exit of turn 11, crashing off, skidding across to the left wall, going into 12. You can tell
Coach Duff Gibson not happy. Harish moving back several spots here. She will stay in the top 10, but just barely. 2 world champions now set to come here in Park City. This is the defending world champion. Big victory in St. Moritz last year for Shelley Rudman, the 32-year-old competitor. Shelley showed up at the 2006 Olympic Games outside of Torino and Cesana, and her goal was the top 10. She walked away from Italy with a silver medal. In fact, Great Britain is the only nation in women's skeleton that has medaled in every Olympics.
She was a bit of a surprise there, but has been very consistently in the top couple in the World Cup since Torino. Won the World Cup overall 1 year and a couple of second places in the World Cup overall.
Good start time, 5:18. Not among the fastest, but like within striking distance of the leaders. That's the key.
Great aerodynamics, good driver, experienced. Pressure won't get to her.
Shelley tours around the world in the sport with her partner Kristen Bromley and their child, Noelle Pikus-Pace, has 2 kids. We'll be seeing her in a little bit.
Wonder if all the kids play together.
Yeah, they must. I mean, it's great that you can actually travel around the world. 500 up. Now, if anyone has the experience.
Little issue there on 14, and a skid as a result of the exit of it.
But she opens up that lead. Could come back, though, a little bit. She does. Comes back 200. Takes over the lead. There's Kristen Bromley.
Well, she was a little slower that second run than Nicotina, but had enough of a lead from the first run.
Rudman with the lead with 5 sleds remaining here in Park City.
You can hear her right away asking her coach what her start time was, wanting to know how that went. There's her quick start, nice smooth load, getting right into position. That's the key thing. You get on the sled and immediately get your hands tucked in, get low, get in a good aerodynamic position. A little skid there at the low point. Lost a few hundredths there.
And the helmet survived too.
The track now clear at the skeleton start for Anja Huber from Germany.
Here in Park City, Utah, we're down to our final 5 sleds in the Women's World Cup skeleton competition. Germany's Anja Huber next to go. Her favorite athlete in the world, the one she looks up to, is Usain Bolt. And in 2008 in Altenburg, Germany, Huber won the World Championship by a Usain Bolt type margin of a full second. Start time 5:15, the first run of 5:16 here. Right before the break, Kaillie Humphries of Great Britain, another world champion, took over the lead. And they were separated, Lincoln, by only 0.04 of a second in the first run.
Yeah, but Huber will probably be looking forward, instead of not wanting to get beat by Kaillie, she's looking to see if she can catch up to Michelle Steele and Sarah Reed and see if she can move up into medal position this run.
Early indication not good, as she's maintaining just that same advantage over Rudman.
Very clean down here on the bottom, though. I expect her to pick up a little more time.
Down to 500s now for the Bavarian, who will be getting married this coming summer. And she falls back and also has a tap in the straightaway before the uphill. So a tough bottom part of the track for Anja Huber. Moving back 2 positions. Kaillie Humphries now knocking on the doors of the medals as she moves up 1 spot.
Surprisingly slow speed for Anja at the bottom of the track there. I didn't think her run was quite that rough. I was surprised to see that.
She was maintaining about the same advantage at the top of the track, which isn't a good sign. Usually we've seen those open up the lead at the top. Yeah, there's a tap. Didn't catch that on the original play.
You can see her shoulders coming up off the front of the sled there. Bouncing around coming off of 13.
And again, the Olympic qualifying a factor for the Germans. Now our top 4. And this has been a pleasant surprise in this young World Cup season. The performance of Australia's Michelle Steele, who won her first World Cup medal way back 7 years ago at the age of 19, but really hadn't done much until coming back from injuries last year. One of the smaller athletes employing the 2-handed start.
Also one of the fastest starts that we'll see.
Great start time. She finished 3rd last week in Calgary. Loads, and let's check out this start time. 5:06, 3rd best.
Same as her first run.
Originally, Steele was in 4th place in the World Cup last week, but when Noelle Pikus-Pace was disqualified, she moved on to the podium.
A little bit of a hard time with turn 6 there. A little hit out of turn 6.
3,600s up at the last split and down to 24. Could be good news
Could be
for the
interesting.
British athlete.
Another bump there. Not a huge one, though. Down to 1,100. This is going to be tight.
Straightaway now needs to be perfect for her to have any chance. Down to 200s. Looking better for Kaillie Humphries, not so much for Michelle Steele. And Michelle Steele falls back by 100th of a second. Kaillie Humphries moves up 1 more position and 1 spot away from the medals. That was close. That's the racing that we're used to here in Park City.
100th of a second after 2 runs. Here we see her turn 6 getting way too high up close to the roof there and then dipping down low in the middle, climbing up again on the exit, and then that will result in a bump before turn 7. Right, going into one of the flatter sections of the track. More hits here in the lower section.
Michelle Steele falling back just 1 spot, so it will be a 2nd consecutive top 5 for the diminutive Australian. Now we have the race here in Park City for the World Cup medals. Sarah Reed of Canada in 3rd place after the first run, 1,200ths ahead of Kaillie Humphries, who has the lead down at the bottom. Within striking distance of 2nd place.
Let's see if Sarah can have a better start than her first run. She had a solid 5:10, but see if she can get into the 5.0s this run. If she can get in there, I think she'll have a good shot at holding her position or even maybe moving up a spot.
5:06 start, 400s better than her first run. It was a breakthrough year last year, which kicked off by winning her first World Cup race last year in Lake Placid. Went on to win 1 gold, 2 silvers, and 2 bronze medals on the season, including a bronze at the World Championship.
So far, really nice lines on the top half of the track.
80.8 miles an hour, among the best speeds we've seen at the midpoint, but a little bit of a skid.
First real mistake we've seen this run from her.
Down to the lower portion now.
Oh, and a hit going into 13.
This will be tight. 3/10 went to 2400s. Next split 1500. She should have enough, but it will be close. Yes, by 1400. So Rudman falls back one spot.
Yeah, she did. Okay.
And Duff Gibson wasn't quite sure initially whether the Canadian took over the spot.
Guaranteed herself at least a bronze. She's actually doing better here than she was on her home track in Calgary last week.
Looks to be a little laid back about this. Maybe all you athletes do is think about the mistakes, not the good stuff when you're done with the run.
Nice look at her form here, coming into the little flat section before turn 11.
Who's this guy looking at us on top of that helmet? A little scary.
You can see her feet brushing on the left wall there. That is not textbook, but that was probably the biggest mistake she made that whole run.
Sarah Reed into the winner's box with 2 remaining. Lizzie Yarnold was the second fastest competitor on the hill last week in Calgary, and by virtue of Noelle Pikus-Pace's disqualification, she took the gold medal. Now here she is with a chance to medal once again, on course from Great Britain.
5:05, a little faster than her first run at the push there. Too early on the turn 3 could cause her some trouble here.
Yarnold, 25 years old, from Kent. Her sled is nicknamed Mervyn, not Merlin as in the magician. Not sure of the connection there.
I don't know a lot of athletes that name their sled. I've only heard of a couple. I'm actually surprised there aren't more.
People name their horses, they name their cars. Why not the sled? 1700, she's actually doubled the advantage from one split to the next. So this looks pretty good for the British slider right here. 2600
there.
Little skid, but not bad speed at 78.2. And Lizzie Yarnold guarantees herself at least at top 2. And clearly, along with Noelle Pikus-Pace, has become the class of this women's skeleton field in the early going of this Olympic season.
Guaranteed herself at least second place here, and so she'll be holding on to that yellow World Cup leader jersey, no matter what happens with Noelle's run here.
It also guarantees she will hold her spot as the World Cup leader when the standings are tabulated, regardless what happens with the American. This was the bottom, not bad.
Clean X, a little brush on the right wall, but the brush is not nearly as big of an issue as the sliders we see come through there, and the sleds get sideways and are skidding.
31-year-old Noelle Pikus-Pace, the United States. If you haven't heard the story, she had the fastest 2-run time last week in Calgary. She was disqualified due to a material equipment violation, moved to the back of the pack. She was devastated after that race, in tears, saying that the violation was not performance enhancing. She didn't feel it was fair, and people wondered when she showed up here in Park City whether she would be recovered mentally. No one questions her skeleton ability. She broke the track record in the first heat, and Lincoln DeWitt, this is for the gold medal in her hometown.
See how her start time is. 5:15, a little better than the first run.
She ran away from the field in the first heat as the last starter off the hill.
I talked to her during training this week. She seemed to have her head in the right space. She was not thinking about Canada last week. She was focused on this week and what she just needed to do here. And boy, is she doing it.
She looked incredibly impressive in the second run, especially last week in Calgary.
Great form. She's always so relaxed on the sled.
Keep in mind, Noelle Pikus-Pace also won the World Cup finale last week on a track in a little town called Sochi. So given what she's been doing here, Lincoln, this is clearly the Olympic gold medal favorite.
On a track where usually we see victories by hundredths of a second.
Bettering her own track record, Noelle Pikus-Pace does it with a couple of exclamation points today. Track record in the first, track record in the second, and the victory on her home track.
Yeah, that was a great run. set a track record in the second heat is unheard of. Track is almost always faster in the earlier heats, and most of these athletes had slower second runs. Noelle went faster.
But she should show a little emotion.
Yeah, you know, she's a little bit quiet, reserved. She also has a huge contingent of family and friends. She grew up less than an hour from the track, so she has family and a large contingent of fans who came up here to visit and watch the race.
A popular victory for a very popular athlete near and dear to Utah. Noelle Pikus-Pace captures the World Cup skeleton competition here in Park City.
I think she's feeling better today than she was last week after the Canada race.
We mentioned that she is no doubt the gold medal favorite at this point, but keep in mind, prior to last week's two-run great showing in Calgary, Pikus-Pace was suffering from a little bit of a flare-up of her herniated discs. So it's a long season, but really a strong start for this American. Noelle Pikus-Pace setting 2 track records on this gold medal winning day outside of Salt Lake. Still ahead, the awards presentation and interviews from the top competitors.
Thanks, you guys.
Standings from Park City, Utah. Noelle Pikus-Pace ahead of Lizzie Yarnold. Michelle Steele back in 5th place. Great showing by Nicotina, moving up several spots here in run number 2.
Surprisingly large gaps for Park City in the top 4 there, you know, where we're seeing gaps of multiple tenths of seconds. Usually you expect to see hundreds of seconds.
Katie Ulander back in 14th place as you look at all of the top 20, with much more to come from Park City. Tim Singer back here in Park City, Utah, where Lizzie Yarnold continues to hold on to the top spot in the World Cup rankings thanks to a 1st place last week and a 2nd place this week. She has been strong. Last week in Calgary, she moved into the top spot because Noelle Pikus-Pace, despite winning the race, was disqualified. This week in Park City, certainly a bit of redemption for the American as Noelle Pikus-Pace captures easily the gold medal by 68 hundredths of a second over Yarnold, Sarah Reed of Canada in 3rd place, and Rudman and Steele. As you look at the World Cup standings, it's a long and winding track to the end of the World Cup season with lots at stake in this Olympic season. flowers are being presented down at the bottom. Lizzie Yarnold, Noelle Pikus-Pace, and Sarah Reed. For those networks leaving us, thanks so much for joining us. For others, stick around. We still have interviews with the top finishers to come here in Park City. A great showing for Noelle Pikus-Pace, who was feeling a lot of pressure over the last 7 days after having her victory stripped last week in Calgary. Looking very comfortable and, more importantly, very fast. The slider from Orem, Utah captures gold in the second World Cup race of the season. John Morgan is standing by with the top 3 finishers.
Okay. Sarah Reed of Canada, 3rd place, bronze medal, first one of the year. You felt like you had 2 good runs?
I did, yeah. I had that little hit in the bottom on the second run, and I thought maybe that would have knocked me back. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with my runs today.
Congratulations. Now over to Elizabeth Yarnold, the 2nd place, but you still maintain your World Cup lead. You happy with your both runs?
Yeah, I am pleased. 3 times the bridesmaid at this track, never the bride. But, you know, coming second to a girl whose hometown it is, that's pretty damn good for a GB athlete. So, still World Cup leader, so that's what more can you ask?
Congratulations. Noelle, what a week it's been for you. Just tell us, you know, did you come out to make a statement or just let everything go by after last week? How did you come in here with it? What type of strategy?
Honestly, I'm just grateful for the agency God has given us to choose. When we go through hard times, we have a choice to make. We can either let it get us down or we can push forward and see what we're made of. And I just feel like that's what today was about, is just seeing what I was made of. And we always have a choice. And so I'm grateful for all the love and support that I've received. And this has been incredible, a track record. I've been chasing this for 15 years since I started the sport, and I finally got it today, so I'm thrilled.
Great way to make a comeback. Congratulations, ladies.
All right, thanks very much, John. And there again, a look at the 3 medalists here at World Cup stop number 2. Certainly those 3 athletes have been the cream of the crop in women's skeleton in the early going, but it's a long, long season ahead on the road to Sochi. It's also a very long day ahead still to come. From Park City, Utah, we have all of the bobsled races, 2 women's competitions, the 2-man and the 4-man races at Utah Olympic Park. Until we join you for those, for Lincoln DeWitt and all of us here in Park City, I'm Tim Singer. Thanks so much for joining us. American Noelle Pikus-Pace, the winner.